Everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I am going to bring you some winter reading recommendations. A lot of people love to use the winter time to either catch up on books that they have been meaning to get to, starting fresh on your Goodreads challenges, or just like cozying up with some winter things. So I have 5 books here that I want to recommend to you all. Some of them get more into like mystery thriller because it's cold and a little bit dreary in many parts of the world. So mystery thrillers can sometimes help you get through that. I have one sci-fi book that I kind of like the idea of sci-fi in the wintertime. And then of course I have some fantasy books. One of them is a childhood favorite, so let's get to it. So the first 2 books that I want to recommend, I'll just say that I haven't read these 2 books yet because these ones are not so much in my wheelhouse. But when I talk about them, a lot of people have had some good things to say about them. And the first one that I want to talk about is If We Were Villains, written by M.L. Rio. When I hauled this book, a lot of people got so excited about this book. And this is a book that I definitely want to read in the wintertime as a part of this like mystery thriller genre that I've been getting to. This is a book that takes place at an acting college. And there are these young actors within this college that go through their whole 4 years of school together until like something tragic happens and there's police involved. I equated it to like the Skulls, that Josh Jackson movie about elite societies within colleges and universities. And so this like Shakespearean actor college kind of reminds me of that whole vibe. A lot of people, like I said, we're so excited about this when I hauled this book. So that got me excited about it and kind of bumped it up my TBR as a list of mystery thriller books that I want to get to for the winter season. It's called If We Were Villains, written by M.L. Rio. Okay, and then this is the sci-fi book that I would like to recommend to you all. This is The Passage, written by Justin Cronin. This is book number 1 of an ongoing series. This is like post-apocalyptic, government experiments, conspiracies, zombie, vampire, all the things that can happen within one book. It did have a TV show. I was told that the TV show already got canceled, but the people I know who have read this book and have since continued with it said it's a pretty good post-apocalyptic read, which I tend to like again in the wintertime. I do like a little bit more bleak stories in the wintertime because you only really get cozy stuff in December, and then the rest of the winter kind of drags on. At least it did when I still lived up north of Minnesota. So if you like a bleak read, this could be a good one with some good action. So this is The Passage, written by Justin Cronin. And now let's get to the fantasy books. So this book that I want to talk about, this is The Bear and the Nightingale, written by Catherine Arden. Oh my word, if you want such a beautifully written story that takes place in the winter time, I have to talk about The Bear and the Nightingale. So I did finish this book a couple years ago, actually. This was a 5 out of 5 star read for me. I haven't continued on with this series. I just felt like this was like really perfect. I will continue on with the series, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about this one. So this follows a young woman named Vasilisa throughout, like, we see when she's born up through young womanhood. She grows up in this secluded, isolated part of the Russian wilderness, and her father is a very prominent figure in Russia at the time, and he ends up having to go back and forth between his home in the woods and then into the cosmopolitan area of Moscow. He has lots of children. Vasilisa is currently the youngest when we first meet her. He's trying to maintain political alliances. He's trying to keep his family alive, and he ends up marrying a new woman, and things just kind of go crazy. The rural Russian way of life is challenged. We have forest spirits and we have the ancient spirits that people adhere to being threatened by new people coming in from Moscow and this cosmopolitan attitude and their new Christian god and all this stuff. It's so beautifully written. There's so much magic. There's a beautiful winter landscape, and I loved every single minute of this book. So if you haven't picked this one up yet, highly recommend The Bear and the Nightingale for the wintertime, written by Catherine Arden. So whenever I look at some of these like winter reading recommendation lists, a lot of people like to talk about Harry Potter as being one of their childhood favorites. It just brings them back to the wintertime, which is true for me. I do tend to reread Harry Potter frequently, but I'm not going to recommend Harry Potter for the wintertime because I think there's a book from my childhood that gives me so much more wintry vibes than Harry Potter does. and that is one of my all-time favorites. This is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, written by C.S. Lewis. This is book number 2 in the Chronicles of Narnia, but if you read it in publication order, this was the first one. So, of course, we follow the 4 Pevensey children. They are sent to live in this country English manor, as a lot of children in London did during World War II to get the children out of the city. So the 4 Pevensey children are living in this English country manor. They're making mischief around the house, and Lucy Pevensey, the youngest, ends up stumbling across a wardrobe, goes through the wardrobe, and finds herself in this wonderful land of Narnia. And then their adventures take off from there. She loses her friend Mr. Tumnus, convinces everyone to come back into the wardrobe, where it's always winter but never Christmas because there has been a spell placed upon it by an evil white witch. One of my all-time favorites. Like, I reread this quite a bit. Like, I have the whole Chronicles of Narnia series, but this is the one that I definitely reread the most. It's my favorite. The 4 Pevensey children, Mr. Tumnus will always be among my favorite. The beavers, the scene where Edmund gets some Turkish delight, where he meets the White Witch for the first time in her sleigh. There's so many great winter vibes that happen in this book. I'm taking you way back to my childhood with this one. If you want a nice classic childhood read, I would highly suggest The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, written by C.S. Lewis. And then this is my final recommendation for this video. This is The Lies of Locke, Lamora, written by Scott Lynch. This is book number 1 of the Gentleman Bastard sequence. I've read this book and then Red Seas Under Red Skies. I have The Republic of Thieves on the docket, and I find myself picking up Scott Lynch in the wintertime. Like, I feel so much more motivated to pick up Scott Lynch in the wintertime. This follows Locke Lamora from childhood through his adulthood. He is raised on the streets of Comore and finds himself in this group of thieves called the Gentleman Bastards. They have lots of adventures when they're children and when they're adults. Locke Lamora has taken it upon himself to run one of the greatest cons of all time within the city of Comore, and that's what we follow. There is a magic system in here, so it's a magic system that happens to Locke. He is not a magic user, but they do have these magic users called Bonds Magi, and nobody wants to mess with them. Their magic is very, very sinister and twisted and dark, and that does complicate Locke Lamora's plans. This is a very complex story, very densely written. It's not a book I feel like you can fly through, but if you've got the time in the wintertime, if you've got a winter break coming up, this could be a really good one that you sit down and devote the time to read, because it's such a great story. It's one of my top fantasy books of all time, so I'd love to recommend it to you. I think you'll have a great time with it. So this is The Lies of Locke, Lamora, written by Scott Lynch. Ooh, I was running out of breath in that in that video. I'm still out of breath. But anyways, those were 5 winter reading recommendations that I have for you this year. Please let me know what you think about them in the comment section below. Do you agree with my picks? Do you have some other ones that you'd like to add? I'd love to hear from you. If you want to follow me on my social media, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, so it's super easy to find. Same name as this channel, at whatcassread. And then you can also find my Goodreads link, and I do have a book club as well listed down below. Other than that, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.